big day for regional headlines because, of course, the impeachment proceedings for Governor
historic impeachment
Ralph Torres, covering this story from the very beginning. And I would even dare say you've been able to get some access to Manglona of perspectives that not a lot of people have gotten because you were right there.
Yes, that's happening at 10 o'clock this morning. And he's facing 6 articles of impeachment. And the House would need to vote, at least 2/3 of the House would need to vote in favor of it for one of those articles for him to be officially impeached. So that's going to happen today.
So in terms of probability and chance, it doesn't. Yeah, looks pretty daunting, right?
The pre-filed resolution got 13 signatures. They need 14 to vote yes on each of them. But before we get to that and delve further into the articles, I did want to share this story from Tinian. Also some major news out of Tinian. The U.S. Navy reopened Chicket Beach on Tinian to the public. 350 pounds of metallic debris was removed from the area, marking a return for many residents to the site, which was part of military battleground and training ground. So here's that story with our interview with Edwin Aldon, who's the mayor.
That beach is a unique beach for us, and at the same time, it has some of the local herbs, that we use for local medicinal, and the municipality and through the governor's office back then agreed, and the military, to start cleaning up Chicket Beach.
Chicket Beach on Tinian is now open to the public. It was a battle site in World War II and then became the Tinian Motor Range and remained a military training facility until 1994. According to Joint Region Marianas, site surveys were done to determine environmental and munition hazards in 2017 at the beach and its surrounding area. They say they only found munitions debris from small arms. They also cleared 350 pounds of metallic debris.
They've been doing this for almost 6 years. And, Typhoon U2 came around. They had to suspend everything. And then they started working on it. And then U2 came around. And then the flights were delayed. People can't come in and all these things. So then they came back just about a year ago, when they started moving the project. And then now it's accessible for the community to come and use this place.
Residents can now drive to the beach, which was not part of the original plan. The reopening perhaps a sign of the times as military activity ramps up. The mayor says there's open dialogue between island leaders and military officials.
We want to be a part of our national defense. We are as blue and red, white, and blue as we can, and we support the armed forces. But there are things too that are very grave concern to our local, and a lot of this.
All right, and so that was our story of the reopening of the beach on Tinian. If you want to see more photos of the beach, you can go to our social media pages. And Chris and Jason wanted to go back to the historic event that is likely to happen today with the impeachment of Governor Ralph Torres. Again, 2/3 of the House will need to vote affirmative on at least one of the 6 articles of impeachment to impeach Torres, which would then lead to a trial in the Senate where they could convict him and remove him from office. Before we, and that will happen in just about an hour, we're hearing that there are people on both sides of the aisle outside of the CNMI legislature at the moment, both for and against Ralph Torres. And it'll be interesting. I think a lot of people paying attention, given that it is an election year, to see, we know where the Democrats are going to go, but to see where the Republican members of the House might vote. And for our viewers, we've been reporting on this. This is a result of about 2 years of investigations, but did want to go through briefly some of the articles of impeachment. And so Governor Torres faces the first article of impeachment for a commission of felony theft of utility services. And in this impeachment article, they charge him for unjustly and without legal authorization obtaining in excess $117,000 in taxpayer-funded utility benefits from the Utilities Corporation for his privately owned residences during the period of February 2015 to 2021. To include exorbitant utility expenses associated with the commercial piggery that was operating on his residential property, and further requested and received unjust utility benefits for at least 2 residences at the same time in Esteo on Saipan and Coblerville for a period of 16 months in the excess of $20,000. They also note that in the Article 2, he faces a second article of commission of felony for theft. And in this, they point out his conduct in 2 different counts. The first count is for unlawfully and fraudulently taking public funds to obtain airfare, stipend, and lodging to attend a political campaign event in the state of Oregon on or about April 30, 2018. They write here, Governor Torres' trip to attend a campaign rally in Oregon, which included first class and business class airfare for himself and his spouse, Mrs. Diane Tudela Torres, as well as 1 day stipend and 1 night stay in a hotel on April 29 to April 30th that costed CNMI taxpayers $16,559.41. Count 2 for theft under the second article charges Torres with unlawful and fraudulent taking of public funds for airfare, stipend, lodging to attend a political campaign event here on Guam on June 23rd, 2018. They note that the trip to attend the campaign rally, which included business class airfare, stipend, and a 1 night stay at a hotel, cost CNMI taxpayers $6,000. And count 3 of the second article of impeachment against Governor Ralph Torres notes unlawful taking of public funds to reimburse himself for fuel in the amount of $919.10 that he fraudulently claimed was for the benefit of the Department of Public Safety vessel. They note here evidence obtained by the testimony made under oath to the committee revealed that DPS, Department of Public Safety vessels, routinely utilize the governor's personal security detail, are refueled at Shell gas station in Puerto Rico, and there was no evidence found to support the notion that the governor personally refueled any DPS vessels at that or any time. Count 4 of the second article of impeachment for commission of felony is related to the unlawful and fraudulent taking of public funds, reimbursement for lodging expenses related, totaling $690. And that was all under the second article of impeachment. Article 3 of the impeachment resolution notes here a charge of corruption for unlawful first class and business class travel. Article 4 also related to corruption notes here that he willfully engaged in corruption and that he committed multiple acts against the interests of the Commonwealth. That first count having to deal with lavish hostings of individuals, both named and unnamed, such as one dinner with a Washington, D.C. lobbyist that cost taxpayers $1,823.90, and a single breakfast that costs more than $399, a car battery for Governor Torres' extravagant...
Sorry, bro. What kind of breakfast was that?
This is, again, I know,
Was that a Jay's or
going through the laundry list here, this is what will be voted on today. So this is Article 4, charge of corruption, misuse of government resources. And under that count 1, Chris, just to repeat it, dinner with a Washington, D.C. lobbyist that costs $1,823.90 and a single breakfast that costs more than $399.
Where was this at? The American?
With a Washington, D.C. lobbyist, and a car battery for Governor Torres' personal van for which he subsequently transferred ownership. And so, none of these are necessarily news if you've been following the reporting. We've also aired the governor's response to all of this as well.
What was his response just generally, Tomas?
That all of this was within bounds and that he's, maybe he didn't use the word entitled, but in the totality of his comments, as the chief executive, he says that these were improved and almost passing the buck too, saying that it was approved. It was approved by someone.
I see.
So
and then I'm assuming his defense with a $1,000 dinner with a lobbyist is that he's we're trying to secure this lobbyist, and so
he hasn't actually addressed that specifically. That one meal.
You ever had $1,000 dinner before, bro?
Not me, but apparently he has. Count 2 of the corruption charge, charging Torres of utilizing his position as governor to request and or approve 85 boating trips using scarce Department of Public Safety resources, including personnel, vessels, vehicles, fuel, and public funds. The fifth article, which charges him of neglect of duty, negligence during crisis, by taking over 120 trips by plane for himself and or his spouse, Mrs. Diane Della Torres, a non-governmental employee, and approximately 85 boat trips.
85.
That is also included in that charge, and we've covered that those trips as well. In total, these numerous and excessive trips by air and by sea, directed and are authorized by the governor, over nearly 6 years, cost CNMI taxpayers $550,000, including airfare, lodging, ground transportation, fuel per diem, stipends, and other supplies. And if you're still listening in, thanks for sticking with us. This last article of impeachment is, again, a neglect of duty, contempt of the legislature. We reported on this. He was held in contempt for failing to appear before the JGO committee a few months ago. And I did want to read this last paragraph, guys. This is the conclusion for the demand for impeachment. Pretty damning. These legislators write, wherefore, Ralph de Leon Guerrero Torres, by commission of felonies, corruption, and neglect of duty, having undermined the integrity of his office and brought disrepute on the governorship, having betrayed the trust of those he swore to serve, having acted in a manner subversive of the rule of law and justice to the manifest injury of the people of the CNMI, legally warrants impeachment and trial and removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor or trust in the CNMI. And so those are the 6 articles of impeachment that Governor Torres faces. Again, if you're just joining us, 2/3 of the House would need to vote yes on at least one of those articles. On at least one, and there are 6.
Those are not good odds.
And 13 people signed the pre-filed resolution. It is likely that he will be impeached today.
I was just about to ask. I was going to say.
I think what people are going to be paying attention to is which articles are voted yes with a 2/3 vote and who votes for that, because it'll be interesting to see if Republicans decide to vote on just one and then vote no on the others, or because obviously Governor Torres, a Republican running for governor, Lieutenant Governor Arnold Palacios, a Republican running as an independent, creating his faction in the House, and then Tina Sablan and the Democratic
So
bloc.
what happens, Tomas? They vote on an article and they get enough votes. What's the next step in this process?
If that goes through, then the Senate would be triggered to adopt rules, I think, for their impeachment trial. We got a hold of
so
the rules.
basically, if they vote on any of these different articles and they get enough votes, then essentially what happens is the governor would be charged with those articles, and then he would go to trial in the Senate.
Yes, so he would be impeached. That would happen if that vote happens, and then to be convicted in the Senate would require 2/3 of them, which is 6 out of 9 votes. But again, it's unclear if they're going to adopt the same rules. Last time this happened around 2013 with former Governor Benigno Fitiel, he resigned, so the trial did not happen. We did ask Governor Torres if he would resign if impeached. He said no.
I was gonna say maybe because there's a lot of unless you're like a super political science geek and everything, it's a lot to process and everything like that. I appreciate how you put it into perspective. There is past historical context for people that can understand, but maybe more currently, can you contrast this with what President Trump went through and like how close the proceedings are to that?
Yeah, I think some people might be seeing how this might also result in how President Trump was impeached but not convicted.
Right.
So
he was impeached, but he wasn't booted out of office.
And I think for more context, the CNMI Senate is led by Republicans, and his running mate Vinny Sablan is a senator who would be on this case in the trial. So that may be the case, though. It's not over till it's over, and even though it's likely that he will be impeached today, it hasn't happened yet.
So that is the $1 million question I was going to ask you, right? Based on your intuition, and you've spent more time on the ground like covering this than anybody else, like on Guam or in the CNMI, right? What would be your best educated guess Would it be that he will be impeached?
We know that it looks that way, but until it happens, we're gonna continue to bring you the facts and the news of the day. Again, just to refresh your memory, and after all of that of what we read, he faces 2 articles of impeachment for corruption, 2 articles of impeachment for neglect of duty, and 2 articles for commissions of felony.
Okay, now are they going to vote on each of these in sequence, or it's like once they vote one, they can just discount the rest, or do they have to vote on all
they're
6?
voting in sequence.
Okay.
Yes. And so because the trial will.
And so if he does go to trial, then he possibly not only faces they voted 2/3 on just one of them, but he could say 2/3 voted all 6 for 6.
Yeah,
which I would say is even more damning for him.
Well, there's going to be a House prosecutor, so it will be like a trial, and as the legal saying goes, innocent until proven guilty.
Right. Is that how it goes?
That's how it goes. The court of public opinion is a different system,
right?
And I think that's what is definitely being shown in the CNMI right now.
Right. With the protest,
the protest is slated to happen, and actually right now people might be gathering. So we're gonna bring you the latest and have the full story tonight on Primetime.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Tomas Manglona also does the Daily Question on the social media networks at KUAM. Had a great one yesterday, Tomas. People have been talking about this car score deal.
Yes, and so we did a report on the car score, its origins, how it was explained, and how people think it's not useful anymore.
Yeah.
And on our daily question yesterday, we asked, what are your thoughts on the car score, the COVID area risk score, and should we still use it? Some of the responses we got on our Instagram page, our first commenter there saying on your screen, we don't even use it to make decisions to get rid of it. If we used it to actually make decisions, then that would make sense. Right below him, commenter saying it's a great number to scare everyone and post everywhere. Another user writes, stop using CAR methodology. The number of positives is an indicator already. Someone commenting, doctors suck at math. Another commenter writing, if the government is not going to use the CAR score as a tool to make changes to restrictions, then don't use it at all. All the CAR score does is create unnecessary panic, stress, and confusion in the public. And one of the last comments we got on our Instagram page too writes, pointless and doesn't even make sense with reality. Stop using it. Someone agreeing with that. Another commenter saying, I barely understand. All I know is, ooh, big number mean bad, small number mean good.
Big number bad.
And Susan over on our Facebook page had a lot to say. She writes, it's worthless information and it should stop being used along with the daily case counts. It's just not important anymore, she says. She adds, report hospitalizations for COVID, but forget the rest. We need to get on with our lives. Does anywhere else use a CAR score, or is that just a Guam thing? Kent writing, it's good information and just one of many tools to use to combat COVID. So there are some supporters out there, I suppose.
Like what, 2?
But as you know, we've stopped reporting that on.
And then we did have a statement. KUM News has made an editorial decision to eliminate the CAR score from our reporting based on overwhelming feedback from our audience and followers who have voiced concerns that it is confusing and irrelevant. We've also heard from various health professionals and government officials that acknowledge that this metric developed earlier in the pandemic did not factor in vaccinations, boosters, and other treatments. The administration's initial campaign called on the community to strive for 5. But of course, recent CAR score numbers have been, what is it?
We're not reporting it anymore, but it's like 182, right?
It is,
No,
right.
162.6.
Well, last night's was 182. No.
Oh, okay.
Well, we're not. It doesn't matter.
And that was kind of the response from the administration was, I mean, and I'm paraphrasing a little, but the response was like, we're not even really using that anymore. And I noticed the governor references it when it's low, right? But no one. So anyway, yeah.
All right. So as of last night, this is the last report we'll mention in the CAR score.
Okay.
This is the last time I'll mention CAR score.
Okay.
Last night, the CAR score is 189.3.
Okay, but that's interesting to me, right? As an analytics guy, because
as an analytics guy,
because the calculus went from being, the previous day was 67.9, then 162, or I'm sorry, 87.9, then 162, almost nearly doubled, and then this time it kind of like tapered off a little bit because, again, we're not doing this anymore. But.
Well, as we reported last night, it's as if we're supposed to close our eyes and ignore the staggering number.
Yeah, and then when the administration doesn't come out and explain things, it's like pulling teeth really to get any information. It's even more frustrating, and I hope they hear that. I hope they hear that people are frustrated, concerned, panicked by just a lot of the inconsistencies in messaging that we get, and sometimes don't get.
But if they stop publishing it and they just stop doing it, I mean, like, there's no shame in that. It's like,
but there also needs to be,
it's either irrelevant or it just doesn't work anymore.
But also, just as we're in news, and just as a reporter, I'm curious. This was a policy decision,
big one,
and is it a number that you use only when it's beneficial to you? That's a big accountability question. There's
a lot of accountability questions.
And this wasn't some tally for. The best Halloween costume. This number is something that was based in policy and something that people look to.
It was the single number that they wanted
the one to follow
to rule them all.
And I do understand, and it does make sense that public health interventions then did not exist that do exist now.
Right.
But given that, there has been no explanation.
Nothing.
So we're supposed to fill in the gaps, and in reporting the story.
Here's what I think the
in a real
was,
world, though, guys, there would be somebody from the administration. I mean, it's so basic. I feel like it's romper room down there at Adelute, but there would be a grown-up in the room to be like, this is what we were thinking about, and you guys are right, because we're right. They kind of dialed down the use of it, but it's still on the jick.
Well, and in response to what the formula is,
what kind of response you got to WhatsApp?
So the formula, the response, was that they wanted to do a video interview, and they're welcomed on the link anytime.
Yeah, anytime.
But the response was, here's the formula, and it was the same formula that Dr. Cabrera mentioned, which was the third version at the time. Mm-hmm. But the response was also, just pay attention to the hospitalization numbers. So the formula hasn't changed.
Basically conceding that it has been devalued.
Exactly. And so that is what we learned.
And see, and for me as an algorithms guy, where the devaluation came in wasn't in the design of it and in the form, but in the fact that he said it was in the third version, and at the time when we talked to him, he said it would continue to be updated to reflect different variables or different inputs of things that contributed to that, but it has not been. So I think the fact,
and to be clear, right, also this is not an obsession with a CAR score number and that we can't let it go.
No,
at least for me in my reporting in the reporting, it's about how this was a trigger for so many things on island
that affected our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
It caused an avalanche in many ways.
They tied our freedom to this number with the Strive for 5 campaign.
But I guess they're just banking on people's memories of forgetting.
Well, it's kind of like the condition of readiness with the weather, right?
Yeah. Right. But the other
they changed that because by definition you have to change it under certain conditions. But
there's another metric too, Tomas.
PCOR.
The pandemic condition of readiness things, and I think the credibility, accountability issues with with GovGuam, public health, the governor's office. It's very real, right? And it's also just very inconsistent. And so they come out with these metrics. And again, people of Guam are not idiots, right? And I think that's where the real disconnect starts to happen, is they put out these metrics from on high, and then they leave them there, and then they don't have the willpower to see them through. And then we're all stuck paying attention to what they told us we should pay attention to while they're just,
Would you say that
off doing whatever?
Okay. Would you say that's the same thing? Because remember,
like, what PCOR are we even in right now?
No. Would you say that's the same thing? Like what we also know is there's been a series of these, right? There's the PCOR system, the CAR score. Yeah. They had a WhatsApp number that you could use to get stuff, but that had some technical problems. And they just kind of let it die in the vine. And then also the app.
If it's any comfort, over in the CNMI, they had what they call the community vulnerability level. Yeah. And apparently it's still at green, even though we're in a surge. And so we asked about it, and no one actually knew. None of the officials we asked knew what the vulnerability level was.
I mean, if you look
so what is it with creating metrics that would shut down or tie people's hands, and then when it's convenient to forget, you forget it.
Like we said yesterday,
it's not really just unique to here too. I mean, in the CNMI, the vulnerability level is does not reflect the
what
numbers.
We see with the feds is they say if they change DEFCON from DEFCON 4 to DEFCON 3, I mean that's a major that has major implications on the quality of life and operations about
I just
the
feel
entire
like
country.
move and how they're not really considerate of the people. You know what I mean? And it almost seems like they're annoyed or irritated when we ask, hey, what's going on with the car score? You know what I mean? We get, 3 sentences on WhatsApp?
Right. I mean, and multiple invitations to the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, our people definitely deserve better, and they're not stupid, and they pay attention. We'd have a couple comments. Matcha, I like Matcha's comments. Why place us on a public health emergency if the positives and deaths are ignored and the heart of the governor and lieutenant governor is unethical? Their mentality is to live with it. Remove the public health emergency then. Rosemary LaGuardia, and that is their mentality. I mean, the governor in her address that we just played, no restrictions, stay the course. I mean, that's what I'm saying. In reality out here, why would we want to stay this course when we're reporting 422 positives last night, when we're climbing from 20, 40, 60, 90, 100, 200 cases? Why would any reasonable person want to stay this course? And that's the message you get from the governor, and you get a video that you can't ask a question to, and no one from Adelup will come on here to explain these things.
When was the last press conference?
I don't know.
Is that even a question to ask now? Yeah.
Pretty sure they don't got time for that. So, and that's the problem
October,
again with
maybe?
these Facebook.
Wow.
But Rosemary had a comment, because the hospital admissions are low, public health and the administration are no longer looking at the car score. It's no longer important. Dr. Berg is now comparing Guam to Iceland. So, yeah, I guess next would be the P-Core system. Are we even adhering to that? Are we? I don't know.
Apparently not.
Because they set different conditions, and then I guess the P-Cores, there's a bunch of stuff, right? And we could just sit here all day, really, like the governor's economic advisory panel. I mean, you talk to people on that.
There's another one. Yeah.
They haven't even met in like how many months, right? And so we set up all these things, and the thing that gets me is the fanfare when they set it up. They've got 10 different graphics. It's a video presentation. They roll out Ricky Hernandez, and let's do all this stuff and make a big show out of it. And then 3 months, 6 months down the road, you don't hear anything about it. And what is it? It is what it is. Tomas, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Right on.
And so, just shifting back to regional news a bit,
Yeah.
the impeachment of Governor Ralph Torres is expected to take place at 10 o'clock this morning.
Right.
We'll share the live stream on our Facebook page.
Thank you, Tomas.
Thanks.
Go get it.
Thanks.
Right on. 9:18. Let's take a break. Ooh, boy, take a break after that, right, Joe, sir? I know, the high blood. We're going to take my meds. It's 9:18. The show continues next. We're brought to you by Pacific Points, Calvo Enterprises, ITE, and Jack in the Box.